My friends, what is going on in this unusual footage of GoldenEye 007, where all these guards seem to have a different sort of outfit or design than usual? Well, indeed, today we're going to explore some very old Gameshark codes, many of which I found on the old Death Star website, which haven't been looked at or explored in who knows how long. I mean, look, every character in this map is a strange, unusual duplicate of some character, including Boris. So hey, if you want to take a look at some insane Gameshark codes, grab a controller, pour yourself a warm beverage, and let's take a look at some remarkable GoldenEye 007 cheats, tricks, and obscure Gameshark codes.
Here we go!
First up today, well, look at this. We have all the guards as Natalia, but we're also going to look at something very unusual on Dam, which you might be able to see if you have a keen eye coming into this cutscene. And, well, the thing we're going to focus on, as much as the Natalia guards are insane, is the object over to our right here. Let's just get rid of this first guard. And yes, indeed, my friends, this is the so-called Beta Chopper, which is unlockable here through really only 4 lines of code with a Gameshark or EverDrive. Now, it's not entirely known what this Beta Chopper was going to do, and look, the game crashed here. Let's give it a reset and get back into it. But here we are, and the exact text on the old Death Star archived website says, under the page Beta Leftovers, the Beta Chopper. Okay, I said these wouldn't involve Gameshark, but the code to activate the cool-looking chopper is interesting. You can see the picture of the chopper, which has a gun on the front of it, which means that it probably would have shot. What level is it from? I think that it was from the jungle, and it's where Xenia came from. Maybe something with a huge level made it slow or complicated, so it was removed. The code to see the chopper in the dam is this, and actually it's only 2 lines. But, you know, it's really an amazing thing to see in the flesh here. This is the first time I've ever played around with it and seen it. And, I mean, yeah, you can totally imagine a world where this was on jungle, maybe it was like a part of the fight with Xenia, but, you know, it was just a bit too laggy, a bit too difficult to program in, you know, back in 1997 or when they were working on the game, you know, even the years prior. Still, it's actually amazing and kind of surreal for me to see this, you know, on a real N64, on a real console for the first time, and to ponder really what might have been. You know, you can totally see maybe this landing in a mini cutscene in the jungle, or maybe even battling it, kind of like we would see in later games like Perfect Dark and The World Is Not Enough. Both have helicopter battle scenes. But hey, there is the cool Beta Chopper, really amazing. We can see that, you know, there's metal siding, the glass is glass, the rotors are kind of transparent, you can shoot right through them, but it's mostly like, you know, I'm strafing into it, it's mostly a solid object, pretty small helicopter, and pretty darn cool. Let's see if a keen eye can catch this next vehicle replacement on Dam. You know, the truck that rolls through the stage, I guess, is an object that can be pretty easily replaced with a few other things in this game. And it's pretty cool. As we pan in here, we'll take a close look. It's another object I've always been intrigued by, and it is none other than the legendary Motorbike. Again, I mean, it's quite tactile, you know, I'm strafing into it, it's a solid object, and it's a very cool thing to ponder what use it may have had. You know, many of you will know that there is a small model of this motorbike on one of the desks on the surface stage in one of the far-off cabins. In my last Death Star video, there were a few requests to go check out the motorbike. Well, here it is in large version in the flesh. And once again, you know, I believe a lot of people speculate that it could have been used on runway which in the movie might have a motorbike scene. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen the GoldenEye movie, but kind of instead of the tank, I believe Bond uses a motorbike to get to the plane at the end of the runway. And, maybe the tank was really the only vehicle that they could successfully figure out how to drive and not crash the game or simplify things or whatever it may be. But clearly the code is still in the game to replace, the truck on dam with the motorbike, just like the beta helicopter or a Jeep, which I believe I've shown off in another video. And that is just so crazy to imagine these old games, with a bit of code trickery, we can unlock these deep secrets that, I mean, really only a handful of people really saw and documented years ago, decades ago, like on the Death Star website. And, I mean, even fewer are looking at and documenting today. So here's the motorcycle on dam. It's really amazing. And a side effect of this code is that, there's this massive gap that opens up in the wall of the dam. I have no idea why this is. It's definitely a side effect of the motorbike Gameshark code, because I've noticed it anytime I've come in and looked, and you just wonder why it all is. And on the Death Star website, in his Gameshark subpage, he says motorbike on dam level. You can make the bike appear at the beginning of the dam. Of course, you can't ride it, but it's solid, so you don't pass through it. It does nothing helpful in the game, but a taste of the beta version is always like smelling chocolate and being fed bread and water. So there you go. There is the motorbike on dam. This next code is totally insane, and I showed it in the opening few minutes of the video. It's called Random Enemies in Mission Mode, and it's just one line of text, which is really crazy, and I'll read the Death Star description because it sums it up pretty well. The levels are filled with one random character, so even the hostages can be like Mayday, for example. After you're finished the level, the code won't work, so you'll have to quit and turn the code back on, but it's not that hard. This code does freeze the game sometimes. I've seen many different enemies in weird places, like old Natalia's in the dam, and the facility where every guard looked like Jaws. And sometimes even Oddjob and Mayday will be the character that appears. It took me forever to see Oddjob though. And so I've been kind of saving this game file. I'm going to play Silo and see what character it gives me. Maybe it'll be kind of a boring one, but who knows? Well, it looks like we got Jungle Bond on Silo. The game may crash. Okay, so Bond is like his normal uniform, but it looks like we're going to get the Jungle James Bond outfit as the character. And even the scientists are going to be that character, and so it's kind of like going to be quite a challenge to, it could be when you're playing through a level, the game, if you're doing a full 100% playthrough, to know who's the scientist, who's the hostages. On Frigate, this gets very strange because the hostages and the guards are the same character model, and so it gets pretty fussy. And I mean, look, what a strange and unusual trick to perform. I mean, what an insane Gameshark code to be found years ago by these incredible hackers and making the game just so unusual to play. This guy's a scientist, by the way. You can afford to pass away a couple scientists. Well, there you go, you cannot. I guess let's check out another level, my friends. Let's check out this playthrough of Frigate and see what guards we got here. Oh, I somehow have both tiny guards, and they are all civilians. My apologies, I went to a different file and forgot to mention that I have the tiny guards on. So we have tiny enemies. This is just so strange. I mean, who figured this out? How was this possible in the game? Like, it's just simply stunning to imagine that enough bits in the code were there to, like, change the guard sizes and then to make them all the same enemy. I mean, look, this would actually be a very difficult challenge to beat the game 100%, you know, with tiny enemies, let alone all unique guards. I mean, it's the kind of thing that I'm sure our pal Grazlu could attempt someday. This is ridiculous. I hope you guys are just finding this as silly as I am. You know, I was crouching there to get a closer look on these tiny, tiny guards, and let alone they're all this civilian. You know, it's like, what on earth is happening? You know, I failed the mission, but that's besides the point. Because just, I mean, like, it's just so ridiculous. And you see, like, the civilian guard, who isn't the main civilian guard, by the way, who you see on streets, it's like a multiplayer-only guard, is holding the same civilian hostage. And, I mean, this would be a very chaotic frigate to mitigate if you were, you know, actually James Bond on the mission. Very, you know, we take frigate for granted in that the hostages are clearly wearing a different outfit from the enemies. But in real life, it might not be that way. You might get these sort of civilian-attired guards all looking the same. Hopefully not, you know, 12 inches tall. You know, reminds me of a joke where a guy walks into a bar and sees a 12-inch piano player at the bar. You know, comment if you know that joke. But what a strange and unusual set of Gameshark codes here, and it would be a very difficult way to play the game, no doubt about that. But let's queue into another level, another reset, and see what character we get, and I'll try to turn off the miniature guards this time. Well, on train, we somehow got the very rare helicopter pilot. This is, again, a guard that is in multiplayer and is pretty much cut from the game. You know, it was believed maybe he would have surfaced on Statue, or, you know, who knows, maybe even on Jungle with that cut beta chopper. Maybe Xenia riding along with him in the front seat or something. And, I mean, that's, like, what are the odds I got another pretty good guard here, a pretty uncommon one, that isn't in the main game anywhere. And the reason I want to play Train is I really want to get to the end and show what will look to be a very confusing ending of the stage. I did notice there was a guard wearing the black suit back there, one guard. I wonder if the spawning guards on stages do not follow the rule of being replaced with, you know, a random multiplayer character on the way in, and so maybe that is the case. Or maybe there are some subsets of guards who, you know, don't follow this rule or aren't affected by this Gameshark code. And as we're getting towards the end of the stage, none of them are, which is a little bit interesting. There we go again. Will Uramov, Natalia, Trevelyan, and Xenia be affected by this code? Let's take a look. And yes, what a strange scene this is. 4 helicopter pilots, who is who? You know, we know this one's Natalia and these others are not. But, I mean, this is just one of the most bizarre things you're ever going to see in GoldenEye 007. Alright, we've got to check out this shrink enemies again because it's so ridiculous. I put on invisibility here. I mean, look, even the intro cutscene is strange because Bond is shrunken. I put on invisibility just because I want to go take a look at Jaws with this shrink enemies code. I mean, it is really hilarious, and there's something, I made an image of this once, and I forget if I posted it anywhere or just is in my, you know, memes folder, somewhere in the depths of my memes folder. But let's go take a look at Jaws, just because of how incomprehensible this is. I mean, look how small fellow Jaws is. And I want to build a pile of remote mines right next to him, just to illustrate, you know, the miniature size of Jaws. And, you know, if you're already wondering how ridiculous these codes can be, you know, is there, say, an opposite to this code called shrink enemies? Maybe indeed there is. And look, I've thrown a bunch of mines. We're roughly as tall as Jaws. I'm on 007 mode with low health here, so let's just do this. Did you see him fly into the corner? Oh my goodness, that's just beyond ridiculous. Wow, you can't even slap the guard. I have to crouch down to slap the guard. You know, I had in mind a couple of funny cutscenes that might be interesting to look at, and Archives is certainly one, so let's complete this stage. It's crazy because they don't run as far, you know, they're only programmed to take a certain amount of steps. I think Dam has the potential to be insanely silly. I'm wondering if Bond will even jump far enough to clear the platform. And you know what extremely strange thing may be shown as a result. You know, how long would this guy take to trigger the alarm? Probably a very long time. Alright, let's see what happens here in the cutscene. I mean, Bond is right at the edge. Let's take a look. He does seem to jump. Well, he clears it pretty well, and given the scope of the dam, it's kind of difficult to really get a scale of how small he is there. Unfortunately, it wasn't as epic as I was hoping. But here's something epic, and indeed the opposite of the shrunk enemies, or the miniature enemies, is none other than the giant enemies. And I mean, this is just absolutely ridiculous. You'll see in the cutscene you do step way further too. And I mean, this is just unhinged. Like, it's, I mean, I'm sorry. This is like the most ridiculous way to play GoldenEye possible. The guards are so large. This works best on outdoor levels because on indoor levels you just see the guards' feet, which we'll go take a look at in a bit. And even the weapons are so huge. Like, look how huge this KF-7 is. It's unbelievable. Using DK mode on with this actually makes them even bigger, which is crazy, and we'll take a look at that in short order. Look, these guys are poking out of their little bunker. That guy's usually behind the boxes. It's easier to play, certainly on outdoor levels with these guys, because they're much easier to hit. A drastic comparison to the miniature mode, where they're, you know, much more difficult to hit. Now he runs the alarm almost instantly. It's like 3 steps away for him to get the alarm, which is really funny. Now we can't see these guys in here because they're not loaded yet, but I believe I open the door, you know, we see their feet, now we see them start to come out, they emerge. You have to open the door, which is kind of hilarious given how, you know, he's gonna get through that door, really. But hey, the DD5, I mean, wow, what a massive item that is. Alright, this cutscene should be pretty crazy to see how far Bond will jump. Let's take a look. Oh my goodness. He jumps so far that it barely, you know, it stops rendering him. He clips through the plane of existence. Oh my god, this is just too silly, my friends. You can see DK mode also affects the guys. It makes their heads and arms bigger, as it usually does. Inside the building, you know, you just get legs, and so on interior levels, you know, it's not as insane, but, you know, we'll see the KF-7s are just massive. Like, have you ever seen a KF-7 that large? It's almost unfathomable. You know, it's gonna be larger than the tank. You can still run him over, which is pretty crazy. Let's see, there's his KF-7 and there's the tank. You know, I mean, the KF-7 is pretty much longer than the tank, which is quite something to remark upon. Oh my god, look at this nade! Look how large this grenade is! Oh my god, these clobs! Like, this is ridiculous! So there's the nade in relation to the tank. You know, clearly not quite as big as the tank, but certainly larger than, you know, an apple or pomegranate like conventional nades are. You know, that's quite something to see. You know, unfortunately, when you pick it up and throw it, it goes back to its normal size. Alright, so we're 20 minutes in, and frankly, I could do this all night for weeks on end. I had this whole other section with this weird code from an even more obscure website, angelfire.com/betagold or something like that on the Wayback Machine, where the code replaces the first alarm on Bunker 1 with hundreds of various objects, depending on the last two digits of the code. I'll show some of that footage here for a bit, but really I should just go through all of these like as a live stream or a full video sometime, because it's just far more ridiculous than I could ever imagine or fit into a 10-minute section here. If you made it this far into the video, then you'll probably just see that video whether you're subscribed or not if I upload it or live stream it. And hey, if you want to support my channel even more and get the best updates on my upcoming projects, you can support me on Patreon, patreon.com/speedlore. You know, I'm probably never going to ask for a GoFundMe for some unusual legal defense or anything like that, but if you do want to support financially, that is the best way. I'm still working on Twine Speedlore, which has seen some unexpected developments recently, so stay tuned, and I'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching tonight, my friends. Thanks to those supporting on Patreon. Stay true, and I'll see you in the next stream, video, or fireside.